School's out, summer's in, and Netflix is adding a boatload of classic movies to its collection. From all-time greats to critical bombs, here are the Sci-Fi flicks coming to the streamer this July. Second entries in famous sci-fi movie series often go down as highlights, but that's not quite how things turned out for the Back to the Future trilogy, as 1989's Back to the Future Part 2 was actually the least well-received installment by far.
Great Scott!
Sitting at 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, the first sequel to Back to the Future brought back Robert Zemeckis and co-writer Bob Gale. Yet critics found that the duo couldn't quite recapture the magic of the original film. Some major critics did like the movie, such as Roger Ebert, who admired its chaotic nature, writing, "Back to the Future Part 2 is an exercise in goofiness, an excursion into various versions of the past and future that is so baffling that even the characters are constantly trying to explain it to each other." Others, however, found that this goofiness didn't turn into a film that was satisfying in its own right. The Chicago Reader's Jonathan Rosenbaum, for instance, wrote, "By the end, you may feel that you've just sat through a feature-length commercial for both Part 1 and Part 3, along with the host of other consumables."
Hey, guys, hey. All I want is a Pepsi.
One of the most divisive superhero films of all time, Spider-Man 3 released with an expectation that it would close out Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy in spectacular fashion. To say it let down many fans would be something of an understatement.
Look at little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry?
Not everyone hated it, though. There are those who maintain today that Spider-Man 3 really isn't that bad, and the film had its share of defenders even at the time of its release. Today, it has a 63% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Among those defenders was Salon's Stephanie Zacharek, who deemed Spider-Man 3 as a vast improvement on Spider-Man 2. She wrote, "Raimi and his co-writers have taken care to give the relationships between the characters more tangible contours than in the last picture, and the actors give better performances as a result." Less favorable was the New Yorker's Anthony Lane, who wrote that the film's problem was that it handled its key ideas with, in his words, an infantile lack of grace. He added, "People really like me," our hero says at the start, adding later, "They love me. Not for long, whiny man. Not for long." 2009 was a big year for animation, which meant that all too many people overlooked Phil Lord and Chris Miller's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
I'm chicken breast, and I'm finally contributing to society.
Still, that movie was financially successful enough to prompt a sequel, 2013's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, which, although not quite as well received as the original, still charmed critics enough to attain a 71% Rotten Tomatoes score. The prevailing sentiment among reviewers seemed to be that the second Cloudy, while not the most necessary sequel in the world, was still pretty fun. The Dissolve's Keith Phipps argued, "Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 works anyway by providing more of the same, and then even more." Others, however, were not so impressed. The AV Club's A.A. Dowd, for one, wrote, "Like too many sequels, this second helping of Meatballs confuses bigger for better, piling on the action but misplacing much of the original's charm." Although the Back to the Future series hit a bit of a rough patch in terms of critical reception with the second installment, it still managed to go out on a high. With an impressive 81% Rotten Tomatoes score, Back to the Future Part 3 was nearly as acclaimed as the first film. It could even be considered the best Back to the Future movie, depending on who you ask. Funnily enough, the two great American critics who are on opposite sides regarding Part 2 found themselves at odds again over Part 3, this time with the sides reversed. Roger Ebert disliked the third Back to the Future, writing, "It's as if Robert Zemeckis, who directed, and Bob Gale, who wrote, ran out of time travel plot ideas and settled into a standard Western universe." Meanwhile, Jonathan Rosenbaum preferred the movie to its predecessor, saying, "This is a good deal more likable than Part 2 because the product plugs have been held back, and Zemeckis is clearly having fun alluding to his favorite Westerns." The early 2000s was an era of critical hits and flops for comic book movies.
With great power comes great responsibility.
One of the genre's early classics was 2002's Spider-Man, the first ever big-screen Spidey venture, if you can picture that. While not quite the most acclaimed film in Sam Raimi's trilogy, this unexpectedly soulful origin story impressed critics with the new moves it brought into the world of superhero cinema. No wonder then that it enjoys a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. In a glowing review, the Washington Post's Stephen Hunter called the film an exuberance, a celebration, a hoot, a kick and a half, and waxed poetic about its web-swinging imagery. He wrote, What Spider-Man gets most and best is the sheer joy of movement and defiance of gravity, both literally and as metaphor. Even reviewers who weren't as wowed by the spectacle still found themselves taken with Raimi's focus on the human element, with the Philadelphia Inquirer's Kerry Rickey writing that its superheroics are gung-hokum beside the saga of one teen's hunger for visibility, validation, and love. Back to the Future is a true classic of science fiction cinema, and with a 93% Rotten Tomatoes score, it still ranks among the genre's finest movies. Back in 1985, Janet Maslin's enthusiasm allowed her to venture a winning prediction in the New York Times. She wrote, "Robert Zemeckis handles Back to the Future with the kind of inventiveness that indicates he will be spinning funny, whimsical tall tales for a long time to come." Gene Siskel also loved the movie, pointing out in the Chicago Tribune, "If families could be persuaded to see this film together, it might touch off a long night of sharing between parents and children."
Whoa, this is heavy.
Not all were so enthusiastic, however. Although her review is counted as fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, the great Pauline Kael took issue with the film's plays for mass commercial appeal. She wrote, "Despite Zemeckis and Gale's wit in devising intricate structures that keep blowing fuses, the thinking here is cramped and conventional. There's a case to be made that Spider-Man 2 is the best superhero movie of all time. At the very least, it ranks among the most acclaimed, and today it enjoys a 93% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Spider-Man 2 can also claim the rare feat of having a top critic score that's even higher than the general score, with 57 of 59 highlighted critics giving it a positive review." For Las Vegas Mercury, Jeanette Katsoulis wrote, "Sam Raimi's reverent realization of Stan Lee's comic book vision makes the fantastic achingly human." And Entertainment Weekly's Lisa Schwartzbaum argued, "This triumphant sequel to the hard-to-top 2002 original may be the first great comic book movie in the age of self-help and CGI wizardry, an entertainment in which both the thrills and the therapeutic personal growth are well earned." The Seattle Times' Moira McDonald, meanwhile, praised the movie's versatility. She wrote, "Take out the love story and you'd still have a nifty action flick. Delete the special effects and a beautifully acted romance would remain. Put it all together and, hey, it's going to be a Spider-Man summer."